I have the pleasure of introducing Adams Nager. Come on up, Adams. So it is Adams. There's a typo in the program, but Adams is originally hails from a small town outside of Asheville, North Carolina. He went to Washington University in St. Louis, studied econ, got a master's in political economy, and has worked for 3 years for ITIF. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about a very fascinating thing around American demographics and innovation. And I just had a little bit of time to look at the beginning. It's fascinating. So looking at what makes the demographics of innovation, people that are innovation in America, different than the normal demographics. And I feel, I mean, I'm sure this is, I know, this is why we have you as your keynote, because this is obviously a very timely topic. So with that, please help me welcome Adams.
Yeah, it should be, mic'd up. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. Very excited to be here, and I know I'm the last speaker before everyone gets to go to happy hour, so I'll try to keep this moving. I work for a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank called the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation. And what we do as a think tank is we're writing papers, we're doing research about innovation in the United States and about the intersection between technology and policy. So we're a relatively small organization, about 20 people, but I get to do economic analysis of policies and of a lot of times I get to estimate the economic impact of new technologies, which is a lot of fun. But about a year ago, we published a paper where we actually surveyed American innovators and trying to figure out who they are, where they're coming from, what drives people to innovate, and hopefully gain some insights. But real quick, I really don't have to pose this question to you guys. You guys already know exactly why innovation matters. But I may be coming at it from a little bit of a different perspective, mostly because I'm looking at an economy-wide, the economy-wide importance of innovation, and really coming at it from a point of we need innovation because we need to be able to compete with other nations. If we stagnate as an economy and stagnate in the industries that should be driving us forward, suddenly we're going to find ourselves losing to countries in Europe, countries in Asia, in these really innovative industries where America has traditionally had an advantage. And I'm also thinking about the demographics of innovation because we do face a skills shortage. There are not enough IT engineers in this country. We even have shortages of people like welders and electricians. So we really need to concentrate on STEM skills in schools, and these are the kinds of skills that also lead to innovation. And I'm stealing a concept of the double deep skills, the idea that you need to be versed in technology, and you also need to be versed in something else. So nowadays, every job incorporates technology. So every job, you need to have the traditional expertise, right? Because when you were a marketer 30 years ago, you really just needed to know marketing. Now you have to know technology as well as marketing. And we're also interested in diversity and inclusion in STEM because these things are normatively good, but also because if we're playing with one arm behind our back, if we're not using all of our tools, all of our resources, all of our people, we're really not going to get the job done. So this is become one of my favorite charts to illustrate something. This describes the U.S. manufacturing sector. And as you know, the U.S. manufacturing sector fell on some pretty hard times from 2000 to 2010. China's accession to the WTO, facing a lot of foreign competition, and we lost over 5 million jobs over a decade. Now, since things have been pretty better in terms of employment, this is annual growth rates. So if you look at that blue line, you can see that since about 2010, we've actually been in the positive. We're growing just a little bit, but we're growing. However, our productivity is stagnating. We haven't grown in our productivity more than 0.5% in 5 years. And that's a problem, and that productivity directly relates to innovation. If we innovate, we get better at making things. We're producing more with fewer people, more with the same number of people. That statistic is going to go up. And so I think that a lot of people, especially here in Washington, assume that we're going to get innovation. Innovation just kind of happens. Innovation is manna from heaven. And we all know that's not true. We all know that unless we are supporting people to innovate, unless we are pushing people into innovation and giving them the opportunities to innovate, it's just not going to happen. And we also know that there's no set pool of innovation. It's not like, you know, okay, we've had our annual allotment of innovation, no one innovate more. There's an unlimited amount of new ideas out there, and it's just about empowering people to go out and grab them. So without further ado, I want to jump into the paper that we wrote. The demographics of innovation was a survey project. We actually polled people who had filed patents internationally through what's called triadic patents in 3 technology areas: life sciences, material sciences, and information technology, as well as people who were filing patents at a few large companies. And we also looked at people who had won awards for their innovation. The R&D magazine every year awards 100 key innovations, the most powerful innovations of the year. We tracked those people down. We sent them all emails. And we had some very interesting responses. We sent over 6,000 surveys out, got over 900 responses, which for this type of work is actually a pretty good response rate, although it doesn't sound that great, but that around 20% is excellent for this space. So who innovates? And there's a lot of assumptions here. A lot of people, and you guys probably know better than most, but a lot of people, when you say innovation, they're picturing Zuckerberg, they're picturing Bill Gates and a young, nerdy guy who's coding in a hoodie, crouched over a laptop, and with a $1 billion idea, and they completely changed the world with no startup capital, et cetera. And that's probably not a widespread enough definition of innovation. So who innovates? First off, we rely so heavily on immigrants, very, very heavily on high-skilled immigrants. Only 55% of people who are innovating are more than are third-generation Americans. 35% are born outside the United States. Another 10% have at least one parent who are from outside the United States. And these people are really from all over the world. I think we had respondents from 60 countries out of our 900 respondents, which is pretty powerful. China and India were at the top of the list. A lot of people coming from Europe, but we also saw South America, Africa, Australia. 6 continents were represented. Next, just jump right in. We saw very few women, only 12%, and that actually matches a lot of other studies that have been done in this space, and that's 12% is too low. Also, the number of minorities in innovation is very, very low, much lower than we expected. This is the proportion, or this is the portion of the sample who was born in the United States, so it's not counting that immigrant population. But if you're looking at this sample, white Americans are vastly overrepresented, and minorities are very, very, very much underrepresented. Sure. So an innovator is, we were looking at people who had successfully innovated. We were really looking for like the top level of someone who had succeeded in innovating. So someone who had filed a triadic patent in a key technology area, life sciences, material sciences, or information technology. And the triadic patent is interesting because it's more than just the patenting threshold. Triadic patents were really, you only get them if you're trying to market to the whole world, and you think that your idea has validity outside the borders of the United States. And also people who had won the R&D Magazine 100 award for their innovation. So we really were looking for the success stories of innovation. And unsurprisingly, the people who are the success stories are very well educated. Over half had PhDs in a STEM subject, and that goes up to 2/3 when you're talking about the immigrant population. Interestingly, foreign immigrants were also more likely to be women. It was about 15% of foreign immigrants of immigrant innovators were women, as opposed to only 10% of the US-born population. So yeah, 56% had PhDs, another 14% had masters, and these are very concentrated in STEM subjects. Most of the PhDs were actually in some form of engineering. And finally, next, innovators are not typically college dropouts. They're not typically in their 20s. You're as likely to innovate in your 20s as you are in your 60s. And part of this, and this is broken down by our three samples, the R&D 100 awards, the life science, material sciences, information technology patents, and then the employees of the large tech companies who we polled. But this shows that you really need to build up expertise in your area, in your science, in order to be creating really groundbreaking innovation. Innovation is the intersection of expertise and creativity, and that really hits a sweet spot in people's mid-careers, 40s to 50s. We also saw that there was a big public role in innovation, and we asked people to describe the company that they worked for, and describe who was helping to fund their innovation, and who else they were working with. And what we found was a lot of public-private partnerships, a lot of people working with universities, working with federal labs. Most of the small companies, the startups, had received some form of public grants. And a lot of those are the SBIR grant, the Small Business Innovation Research Grant, which have had a really big impact on innovation. I want to talk a little bit more about the imbalances in innovation that we saw. Start with women in innovation. So here's a bar graph which shows the percentage of women in different areas. So we'll start with bachelor's degrees in 1985. That's when most of the women who would have the potential to be in our sample would have been graduating college. It was about 50%. If you look at the percentage of STEM bachelor degrees, or bachelor degrees in STEM, it's lower. It's a little under 30%. People, or engineering PhDs, even lower, 22%. And engineering bachelor degrees, only about 13%. So you kind of have this cascading effect where almost you can just see at every level barriers making fewer and fewer women being included in this field, until you get all the way down to US-born innovators, all the way down at 10%, just 10% of the sample. And things are getting better over time, but by no means are we just exploding towards a solution here. If you look at the percentage of people majoring in STEM, things got better until about 2000, and since, it's really been frozen. We have the same, especially in like engineering, computer science, mathematics. It's kind of hovering around the 20% level, and we really have not seen a big improvement. Where we have seen a big improvement is in biology, where now almost 60% of majors are women. But in some of these physics, engineering, it's still right around 20. And we can see the same thing with women in STEM PhDs. And again, things are getting gradually better, but over the last 30 years, or sorry, this is the last 10 years, it's really been pretty flat. And the same kind of cascading effects we can see with Hispanic populations in the United States and African American populations in the United States. Each group is about 11% of the total population. And if you look at the PhDs graduating in 2012, that's lower. If you look at the PhDs in 1985, even lower. Scientists and engineers, again, fewer African Americans and fewer Hispanics are making it through to the final levels of actually being employed in these fields, and then even fewer are having their innovations recognized and having their innovations be successful and reach the market. And a lot of that has to do with education levels. Here is the progress for minorities in doctorate programs, and I should mention that this is all doctorates. It's not just STEM doctorates. And you can see that we're making some progress, but a lot of that progress is being made by Asian Americans, there's not necessarily even Asian Americans, just people of Asian descent. A lot of them are foreign nationals. So moving forward, one thing I would love to see that could help fix this gap is computer science education. Currently, if you look at where computer science education is available in the United States, it's very divided among wealth lines. Better neighborhoods have better schools, offer computer science. Poor school districts tend to not be offering them. And even school districts that do have it really push it towards a very certain demographic of their students, white and Asian males. And a lot of times, females, minorities are not encouraged to take these types of classes. So in terms of one place to start, I think that there could be a lot of motion there. And a few policy priorities. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is a billboard that showed up in Silicon Valley a few years ago. H-1B is a visa program to bring high-skilled innovators into the country. It's very limited. We hit the cap every year. The day to apply is I think Monday, and they'll get 230 applications for 80,000 visas within a week, and they'll have to resort to this lottery. But bringing in high-skilled immigrants is very important for American competitiveness. Otherwise, companies are going to go to Canada, or they're going to stay in China or stay in Germany. And then just a couple of ideas before I wrap up. Expand STEM immigration, increase access to STEM for high school students. Once people get to college, a lot of times you have a college freshman walk into a huge 400-person intro lecture hall, and they're offered no support. This might be the first time they've ever had a science class that's using calculus. This might be the first time they've ever seen some of this math or had to study for a math or science course. And if you don't do well, you get a C. And you say, oh, maybe I should go become some useless major like economics, and you end up writing this kind of paper instead of doing useful things like you guys. I can say that as an economics major. Not how I got there. I'm glad someone thinks I'm funny. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here. And yeah, I can take questions. I also have, if anyone's interested, I have executive summaries of the paper up here if anyone would like to take a look. Also, everything we have published at ITIF is available on our website, itif.org, and we write about technology across the board. There's a link on the agenda page. That's good to know.
What do you think of Trump's policy?
You'll have to be more specific. Hi.
More specific on that. When Kurt introduced you, you said this is very timely. And for anybody that wants to see the study, on the website for the agenda, just click the word here underneath his picture, and the whole study is there, and read it. It is incredible, especially in light of some of the things we're seeing here in the US. So my question to you, what kind of presentation and launch and PR do you have planned to get that message out, to get your study message out?
So we are, as a think tank, we are not a PR firm. We do no lobbying. We publish and then see who picks it up. But a lot of people have been interested in this study since November, and we're very, very happy that it's kind of gotten a second life after being published last year, and we're glad people are paying attention. Hi.
Hi, so I had a question about your point about women in STEM and what we can do to encourage more women to participate in these fields. So I think it's certainly a timely topic. In maybe the past 5 years, maybe even the past 2 years, we've seen a ton of these different types of efforts spring up, right? So there are all of these different organizations for essentially girls at any age, from elementary school up through college, to encourage STEM participation. So my question is, do you feel like women in STEM participation, it will improve over the course of the generation as a result of these many efforts that have sprung up? Or do you think that there's more that could be done in addition to these trainings, these tutorings, these affinity groups that already exist?
Yeah, and there's been a huge push for things like computer science education, for inclusivity in STEM, especially in elementary school, or primary school, on up. One thing that I have seen that might be interesting to you, there's a lot of data that suggests that as more people are interested in certain STEM fields, they all go to universities looking to major in the same things. And when they get there, schools like University of Washington, Stanford, Harvard are seeing explosions in the number of students interested in majoring in computer science, like 300%. And so they resort to these huge lectures for Computer Science 101, and they cram 400 students in, and they're not able to give personalized attention. They're not able to say, okay, well, you had computer science in high school and you didn't. Maybe we should have different curriculums, or maybe you need more help. And so you get to this point where it's just a pressure cooker, and the school says we have to get down to 200 spots when there's 600 freshmen who are interested. And the research has shown that the people who get forced out when you have to restrict like that are women and are minorities, and people from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds.
Well, I just had to follow up on that, because it's not for lack of spending. The U.S. has spent countless millions on trying to increase the number of minorities, women in STEM over the same 10 years that you show it's flat. So have you found a silver bullet for why that is?
I think that sometimes universities don't have incentives to increase the number of slots they have for their classes. It's very hard to get a university to say, okay, there's a lot more interest in computer science, maybe we should cut it. You can't just fire tenured professors. It's very hard to transition towards having more slots available when a major is in more demand. As time goes on, hopefully that will occur. I also think there's a lot of interesting policy levers we can try and push to incentivize universities to reach that point. And there is some interesting work being done. I know the Google capacity grants, I may be getting this name wrong, but Google gave a number of grants to university. Actually, sorry, I think it's the Google Foundation. Gave a number of grants to universities to try and expand the actual number of slots available in their classrooms, and improve retention to make sure that every freshman who shows up saying, I want to major in physics, I want to major in computer science, has a fighting chance of getting through.
The number of women enrolled in medical school continues to be high. And in fact, in 2016, the Association of American Medical Colleges found that medical school enrollment rose by 6.2% between 2015 and 2016, which was the highest since 2006. What is it about the medical field that other STEM areas can learn from as far as, you know, attracting women and assisting them in excelling and engaging in innovation in the medical sciences.
Absolutely. So the medical profession is a success story in terms of inclusion. And if you look at, you know, we found big differences in our samples, life sciences innovation. There is a big difference between that and for like the IT professions. But still, even with, you know, even in 1985, when most of these people were graduating from college or entering med school, there was almost 50%, you know, a very healthy number of women entering these fields. You still see low percentages of women actually coming up with these innovations, actually commercializing technologies, around, I think, 20 to 25%. And I can find that exact statistic in the full paper. So I think that the medical field is a success story. I think that there is a certain acceptance of women in the field that maybe does not exist so much as in engineering. I think in a lot of engineering schools, it's still like, hey, look, it's a female engineer, not, hey, look, it's an engineer. So I think that's important. You know, no one says anymore, you know, hey, it's a female med student. It's just, it's a med student. So I think other fields can work towards that. But even with that, there's a lot of barriers you have to break down in order to get to seeing 50% of innovation coming from women.
I have a question. Studying is one thing, and working is another thing. So in the working environment, we have lots of convergent programs for people comes from science, and then they go to engineering. So we spend lots of time with workers, just converting them from pure like human resources to engineering, vice versa. It depends on the needs on the organizations. So how can you help with getting statistics from the organization, not from the universities?
So our paper is very reflective. We just try to take a snapshot. And our paper, hopefully, you know, we didn't do any kind of analysis, econometrics on this. We really just reported what we have. So we're not able to, with this paper, say pretty much anything about like, you know, this is what we should do, or this is exactly the problem. We put out our survey and we observed what we saw.
There's some evidence that, shifting gears a little bit, there's some evidence to suggest that schools kill creativity and critical thinking generally.
The school system tends to kill creativity and critical thinking, which is a component to being innovative beyond the STEM training. I'm wondering if you're going to study that, the metacognitive skills that are required. And this is a pretty core one because China has lots of STEM people, but one of the commentaries that's been made about it is that typically in China, for various reasons, there's less creativity and less critical thinking. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
I don't have an answer for you on that one. It definitely seems like there's a lot of different approaches, and I think everyone learns differently. So I think engineering schooling programs that address individual skills and individual strengths and weaknesses to help them learn while still hanging on to leverage a student's creativity instead of dampening it. I think those are going to be important ideas moving forward. But in terms of, you know, I'm not gonna advocate for scrapping the education system. Not yet.
Okay, so do you have anything more to say?
No, I think so. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you, Adams.